Wow, here's another video about me talking about Transformers Beast Wars. What a big surprise. Okay, but in all seriousness, this time we're talking about the legendary Beast Wars cartoon, or more so specifically, the characters, from the lovable Maximals to the entertaining Predacons. With the power of its cutting-edge CGI animation, at least for the time, Beast Wars is often heralded as one of the best cartoons of the late 90s. And again, while the animation may be knackered to a modern audience, at least the story and the characters hold up exceptionally well. I'm your host, Beyond a Hero, and this is all the Transformers Beast Wars characters ranked. But before we actually begin the video, please keep in mind that this is all my opinion. When it comes to Transformers Beast Wars, there's actually very minimal characters that I disliked. So to challenge myself a little for this ranking, I'm going to be finding an equilibrium of whether the character has a solid and intriguing personality, or whether they were actually really pivotal to the plot. If you disagree with me with this ranking, then that is perfectly okay, because I know many of these characters on this list were really pivotal to some people's childhoods, and I respect that. Second of all, I'm only going to be looking at characters from a Beast Wars cartoon. So to anybody who's a fan of Cybershark or Injector, then I'm really sorry, this isn't your video. Third rule, the character must be Cybertronian, so no humans. And fourth of all, the character must have at least 3 consecutive appearances if they are to make the list. And now, without further ado, let's get ranking. Yes. Oh yeah, just to warn you, there's also spoilers.
I am Tigerhawk, emissary of the book. Your form's changed, but I know you, Megatron.
Oh, knock it off! Yeah, sure, Tigerhawk is the most powerful character in all Beast Wars, but really, do I care? Admittedly, he was built up quite well in his debut episode, being some sort of sleeper agent for the alien species the Vok. But that is where my interest for this junkie of a character ends. As a result of Hasbro's executive meddling, he is one-dimensional, boring, and he is such an egregious character. Tigerhawk was lazily shafted into the show for the last 3 episodes, and he doesn't add anything of worth to the plot. But because Hasbro didn't know whether they wanted to sell his toy or not, Hasbro told the writers to kill him off. But then Hasbro changed their minds and released Tigerhawks on shelves anyway, but unfortunately it was too late to change the writing process, and oops, he died. If the writers didn't include Tigerhawk at all, then the story wouldn't have changed a single bit. Tigerhawk was an absolutely worthless addition to the Beast Wars cast. In a show otherwise the most interesting Transformers characters you could possibly ask for, Tigerhawk could have been an awesome and intriguing character, but instead he became nothing more than an expendable cast member. And considering how overpowered he is, that's kind of embarrassing.
And if we're talking unnatural life forms, then we gotta be talking about just one thing. Robots in disguise! Cheetor! Maximize!
Okay, this one needs a bit of explaining. Okay, I understand that Cheetor is a fan favorite in the Beast Wars community, but do keep in mind that this is my opinion. And in my opinion, other than Tigerhawk, Cheetor is my absolute least favorite Beast Wars character. But compared to Tigerhawk, at least Cheetor has more than one positive qualities. Number 1, his Transmail design is awesome. Number 2, he has a personality. Number 3, I actually loved Cheetor in the 3-parter Feral Scream episodes. Because after an accident with one of Megatron's inventions, Cheetor was believed to be destroyed. Whereas in reality, his beast form gets to him, and he is worried that if his friends try to heal him, then he'll become a freak of nature. He then ends up accepting his new Transmail II form, and thanks to the help of Optimus Primal, he conquers the monster within him, and he becomes a badass character. Which is something I would have said if Cheetor did actually anything in the Beast Wars cartoon. Sure, Cheetor is good-natured, friendly, and a bit of a show-off sometimes, but over the course of the show, I really felt it didn't do much of value to the plot. Sure, he did have some spotlight in Season 1 episodes for Web and Equal Measures, but he makes the same mistake twice in said episodes, and he's so annoying in these episodes that I can't even relate to him to a personal level. And even after the Feral Scream 2-parter, he still does absolutely nothing of worth to the show. I mean, again, Cheetor does have personality, but if that isn't tested for the course of a Beast Wars series, then sorry Cheetor, but you're boring. Again, if you love this guy, then that's absolutely no problem. I respect that. I'm glad you can relate to a character that I otherwise consider mediocre at best. But I'm sorry, I just do not like Cheetor.
TigerTron, maximize!
Out of everyone in the Beast Wars cast, TigerTron was always middle in the road for me. It's not that he's a particularly awful character. No, we've already gone through those. But rather that every time he appears on screen, I just think, oh hey, here's the blue Cheetor guy. He's nice. He's one of two characters whose logic processes are affected by his beast mode, although this one is subtle in comparison. He's the voice of reason, and he much prefers nature over battling in wars. He's intriguing to some extent, and he was pivotal to some moments in the plot, such as the Trigger 2-parter, and in Call of the Wild, where he encourages the Maximals to use their beast modes to their advantage. I don't mind TigerTron, but to me he wasn't the most worthwhile addition to the Beast Wars cast. I didn't look up to him in any particular way, I didn't really even care much about him, to be honest. So overall, I don't mind TigerTron. He's a nice little bonus, but at the end of the day, I don't like him too much to the point where I feel the need to collect his figure, unless the Golden Disc Collection says so otherwise. Beast Wars was one of the rare occasions where I enjoyed the baddies more than the good guys for the right reasons. There isn't a single Predacon which I dislike, and yes, I'm afraid to admit it, but I really like Dinobot II. Every scene this guy appears in, he always has this sense of ambiguity and dread, simply because he's a clone of Dinobot, but just without his honorable mannerisms. He shares none of the original Dinobot's qualities. I must admit, I always feel a little unnerved when he appears on screen, simply because this is not the Dinobot that I know and love, but rather, he's just Megatron's little pet mercenary. Normally these characters are only good enough for grunt work, but he's actually pretty competent, proving to be a serious threat to the Maximals in the last season. He was threatening, cunning, and duplicitous, but even though I personally like him, there is just one single major flaw that breaks his character. What was the point? You know, I went to sell the then new Transmetal 2 toys, but even then, they could have used another character, and nothing much would have changed. I probably wouldn't have even minded Dinobot 2's wave mates Scrouge and Spittle to take Dinobot 2's role. Sure, the fear factor of the fact that Dinobot doesn't have the same mannerisms as Dinobot would be gone, but those two could have easily filled up a spot as Megatron's attack drones. And had not the episode's Dark Glass been scrapped, then it would have given a lot more meaning and emotional depth to Dinobot 2. And although Dinobot 2 eventually gets the original's positive qualities, thanks to Rampage's death, this only truly happens at the very end, and it feels very, very rushed. Even worse, he doesn't even get time to retaliate against Megatron, as he was then thrown to the side and he perished when the Nemesis exploded. Although Dinobot 2 may be threatening, his lack of importance to the story is really what drags him down significantly. And while he still leaps and bounds better than the characters we talked about before, unfortunately, Dinobot 2 has the not so honorable title of being my least favorite Predacon.
Stasis lock imminent.
No, not now!
Actually, Terrorsaur, we are talking about you right now. If one has to simplify Terrorsaur's character to just one sentence, it will be Beast Wars Starscream. But I like Starscream, which means I like Terrorsaur too. But beyond that terminology, Terrorsaur isn't really anything else. While for the first few episodes it was clear that he was the traitorous Predacon, but as Black Arachnia entered the picture, Terrorsaur became your average Predacon soldier. And the only other thing I can find in Terrorsaur is that he is probably the only person to ever treat Waspinator with respect. As Beast Wars developed into his own thing, Terrorsaur was pretty much just forgotten by the writers. And while Hasbro wanted to keep Terrorsaur alive simply because, well, he was the Starscream, by the end of the first season, Terrorsaur was pretty much redundant. And after the end of the episode's Dark Designs, Terrorsaur quietly dropped his Starscream persona to better focus on being a more useful soldier. And hence why Terrorsaur really wasn't a good successor to Starscream. Before the, well, like 2 episodes where Terrorsaur gets his spotlight, he was a really entertaining character. And even after his quiet maturity as a character, he was still kinda lovable, I must say. Of course, later down the line, one of Terrorsaur's colleagues, Tarantulas, would become a much better Starscream character. But while Terrorsaur was still around, at least he did the simple job of entertaining me. And as long as he entertained me, then, Terrorsaur, I do not hate you.
Is that fear you're feeling, Maximum? Yes. My spark, it feeds on terror. Let it grow. Let it consume your circuitry. Feel it. Yes, feel it. Feel the fear.
For his first few appearances, Rampage really did feel like a breath of fresh air in the Predacon ranks. Rampage was scientifically created as a monster, and people view him this way. So much so to the point where the only thing that makes him happy is to make others feel pain. Unfortunately, the writers couldn't really think of a proper way to adapt his character for the rest of Season 2, and thus he was pretty much pushed aside and became nothing more than a Decepticon grunt. It was only in Season 3 when he really became an interesting character, of course having his famous rivalry with Death Charge. Not only being expanded as a tragic Frankenstein monster, but we really get to know about his truly gratuitous actions. Not only destroying Death Charge's home colony Omnicron, but also being mentioned consuming some of Death Charge's friends at Starbase Rugby. And also he really loves to chant about Death Charge's misfortunes. It was just a shame that Rampage was a whole lot of nothing in Season 2, other than his debut episodes Bad Spark and Transmutate. It was only by adding another character to the mix did Rampage really become a scary entity.
Airazor. Maximize!
Airazor for me is one of those characters that have heaps of personality, but just does very little for the story. She excels at aerial interrogation, but that's the only time the story ever really expanded her. When it comes to her characterization, she is witty and she loves a bit of adventure. Yet the writers couldn't think of a proper way to expand her character, and they killed her and TigerTron off in the halfway point of Season 2. Yet, compared to Cheetor, in my eyes, Airazor is more enjoyable and endearing. And that's saying something for a character that has a relatively short time on the show in comparison. And I must admit, Airazor definitely left a more lasting impression on me.
When a spark goes online, there's great joy. When one is extinguished, the universe weeps.
Rhinox was an epic dude for about the first season. I do definitely prefer Rhinox over Optimus Primal and
Ultra Gear.
but beyond Season 1, he didn't do much else. From what I can recall, in Season 2 he goes into a Matrix and learns to dodge bullets. Sorry, wrong franchise. And the only notable thing he did in Season 3 is that he attempted to remove Black Arachnia's shell program. The point is, as the series went on, Rhinox got a lot less screen time, probably because Mainframe didn't have a budget to make his Transmel form. And thank goodness for that, all things considered. Luckily, Rhinox was a major player in the first season, which, even better for Rhinox, Season 1 has the most amount of episodes. You hear that, Rampage? Rhinox was characterized as a somewhat dopey tech expert, and even in the later seasons, every time he appears on screen, he always brings such a friendly atmosphere to the table. Except for Dark Designs, I guess. And even though he didn't receive significant character development, Rhinox did many things in Season 1. From saving the protoform that will later be Airazor, leading a group of blinded Maximals back home, single-handedly taking on Megatron, and many, many more. Rhinox was a great character, only to be let down by having little involvement in the succeeding seasons.
Nobody bites my tail and gets away with it. Quickstrike, terrorize!
Quickstrike only really has one goal in life: beat the hell out of anyone you cross. Yeah, that's about right. I mean, the whole reason the guy joined the Predacons is simply because he'll have more opportunities to beat up people. In his earlier appearances, the writers pretty much made sure that this cowboy lingual maniac got all the screen time and attention, but when Rampage entered the picture, Quickstrike became a side gag, condemned to be blown up due to his violent tendencies. For crying out loud, being blown up is Waspinator's job. But the major reason why Quickstrike is higher than Rhinox on my list is because I felt he had more of a presence even in Season 3 when he didn't do much. He's also a lot more memorable due to his role as being one of the two fuses of the series and because of his one-liners. Quickstrike was a great fuser to cast for the Beast Wars cartoon. It's just, aside from Tangled Web and Master Blaster, Quickstrike is pretty unimportant in the grand scheme of things, and he ultimately falls short in front of his maximal doppelganger.
Big Bud, how do you feel?
In a word, cry.
I've been way too pedantic on this list, haven't I? Optimus Primal may be 13 out of 21 robots in this list, but that does not make him a terrible character. Frankly, I like the guy. He's not my favorite character either, but he is definitely an inspiring leader. Unlike Optimus Prime, Optimus Primal is an inexperienced leader. He is very pushy, but that's because he wants the best out of his teammates. Even though I don't mind this characterization, even though I've seen it in other pieces of media, Optimus for me is just kind of there really. His importance to the plot is very significant though. For example, saving the original Optimus Prime and conducting the temporary truce at the end of Season 1. Going on about all of Optimus Primal's other biggest hits would probably take forever, and this video is already painfully long as is, so Optimus Primal is a very important character, he's just not the most interesting to me, hence his rather stagnant place on this list. Meanwhile, other characters like Quickstrike and Airazor are very entertaining but are placed low on the list because they have little to no involvement to the story. Characters like Dinobot II and Terrorsaur are extremely low on this list, not because I hate them, but simply because the writers didn't think of a proper way to expand their character. Tigerhawk is dead last in this list because it's Tigerhawk. The characters we looked at so far showed a lot of personality, but not so much in terms of relevance to the plot. For my personal taste, Optimus is the other way round. He's extremely relevant to the cartoon, but I just don't find him particularly interesting or relatable in any way. Fortunately, this drought shall end, as the next 12 entries both balances characterization and relevance.